Good evening everyone. Welcome to the Phillips Collection. I'm Jonathan Binstock, the Vredenberg Director and CEO, and I am really excited about this evening. You can ask any of my staff members. They're probably saying, I'm glad this evening has finally arrived. This guy can stop talking about it. Welcome to all of you. When I started 5.5 months ago here at the Phillips Collection, and when I learned that, this was March probably 15th or something like that. I learned that on August 17th, there would be a conversation between Frank Stewart, whose work I hadn't yet seen, and Professor Hortense Spillers, introduced by Fred Moten. I was astounded. Professor Spillers and Fred Moten are among the greatest theoreticians, writers, thinkers of our time. And I mean that. And it is an honor to be here at the Phillips with them and sharing the stage. I kind of want to get Fred to stand up here for just a second so I can say I shared the stage with him too, but we won't go that far. So a little, why am I so excited? So this is a little personal aside. These two individuals, Professor Spillers, Fred Moten, loom very large in my little corner of the world, in a lot of people's corners of the world, I should say, but certainly mine. Professor Spillers, I read your essay, Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe, an American grammar book, which is a very important essay, seismic in its impact. When it was assigned to me, I didn't have the idea to read it, by Professor Michael Awkward, who you may know, at the University of Michigan in 1992 when I was 12 years old. No, you could not understand this essay as a 12-year-old. I had to read it like 3 or 4 times. It was instrumental in awakening me, at the time a young man, from the cozy suburban mindset of suburban New York City. I was in Ann Arbor at the time, of course, but to a world of ideas that really changed the direction of my life. One among many essays that I wrote, but certainly an essay that I remember to this day, and a name, Professor Hortense Spillers, that I remember to this day. So in 1994, I end up meeting Sam Gilliam here in Washington, D.C., and starting my research on Sam Gilliam. And I spent the next 6 years picking up the breadcrumbs of Sam's incredible career and simply narrativizing, as I would say, what happened so that other people could understand what he accomplished. 20 years later, after I defend my dissertation in the year 2000, in 2020, Fred Moten writes an essay called The Circle with the Hole in the Middle. And in a few pages, I worked on 2 retrospectives, years in the archive of the library, picking up these breadcrumbs. In 6 pages, this guy writes an essay that blows my mind and is easily the best piece of writing ever written on Sam Gilliam. And so I just wanted to tell you a little personal side here to let you know. And by the way, it blew Sam's mind too. Because we looked at each other and just said, oh man, that essay. Because how do you describe that essay? It reads like Sam's art looks. It's just it's just an experience. So we agreed that was an amazing piece of writing. So here the two of them are with us at this gem of an institution, the Phillips Collection, which we all love so much, celebrating the incredible Frank Stewart. It is a testament to Frank Stewart's long and deeply influential career that this unprecedented conversation with such extraordinary luminaries in the midst would be the final program of the Stewart Summer Sessions. I am thrilled to welcome you all to this historic moment here in D.C., where Frank Stewart's practice began as many of you now know, with his mother's Kodak Brownie camera in 1963 as he photographed the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedoms. You can see those images and so much more, of course, in the exhibition, Frank Stewart's Nexus, which is his first museum retrospective, co-organized by the Phillips and the Telfair Museums. The exhibition is curated by Ruth Fine. Formerly of the National Gallery of Art in DC, and still my friend. And of course, curated as well by Fred Moten, the poet, scholar, and professor of performance studies at NYU's Tisch School of Fine Arts. Associate curator of the Phillips, Renee Moorer, coordinated the presentation at the Phillips. I want to thank all of you for your outstanding work. The exhibition is generously supported by Altria Group, who is the presenting sponsor. John Mason is in the house. Thank you, John. It was also made possible by the Linda Lichtenberg Kaplan Exhibition Fund, the Carolyn Alper Fund for Contemporary Art, the Marion F. Golden Charitable Fund, and the Terra Foundation for American Art. It is also supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts. We are grateful for all of this important support. We could not make an exhibition like this or have an evening like this without this support. Thank you, Frank, for your 6 decades of art and generosity. The Phillips is proud to host your retrospective. And thank you, Fred Moten and Professor Spillers, for joining us this evening. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Fred Moten.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I want to thank you and all the rest of the wonderful people here at the Phillips who have made this show possible, especially Renee Moore, Ashley Whitfield, made this show possible, and also this great night possible, which is a real dream come true for me. And the other person that I have to mention again with great gratitude is Ruth Fine. I'm pulling out my phone because I just want to get this right. I wanted to mention, for those of you who don't know, that just this past week it was announced that Ruth would be the recipient of the Lawrence A. Fleischman Award for Scholarly Excellence in the field of American art history. And it just reflects a long and distinguished and generous career. And I feel like I feel all the beautiful weight of that generosity in this show. 5 years ago now, through another mutual friend, a great photographer and impresario, Daniel Dawson, Ruth and I met and began to plan and to think about, or I should say she brought me in to help plan. I didn't help that much, but to help plan and think about this show and what it would be, and really introduced me to Frank's work. I went down to Philly on the train and met Frank in Ruth's apartment, which was just full, every inch of the wall covered with Frank's work. And it felt like you were in the middle of a flower that hadn't quite bloomed yet, just a bud. And to be upstairs, to see the extraordinary blooming of that show in that space has just been amazing. And getting to know Frank and getting to know about his history and being able to listen to him talk has just been a beautiful education for me, including, I remember especially the moment when you told me that your stepfather was Phineas Newborn. And a bell went off in my head. because another of Professor Spillers' extraordinary essays is called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, a post-date, written 25 years after the publication of Harold Cruz's classic book, The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual. And she spins out a beautiful theory about what a black creative intellectual is and should be and could be at that historical moment in the early 90s. And one of the key figures whom she sort of posits as a kind of model for what this black creative intellectuality might be is Phineas Newborn. And I thought, the only actual idea that I even had to share and offer to Ruth for this show was, we gotta get Spillers and Stewart on stage together to just talk. Okay? One way to think about this show is called Frank Stewart's Nexus. And for me, what is most fruitful and important and generative in Black studies, women's studies, literary studies over the last 50 years, one way to describe that would be that it is Hortense Spillers' matrix. So I think of Nexus and matrix, and when I add those two words together, somehow, because I'm not very good at math, I get Memphis. And they're both from Memphis. And I just said, I just want to hear them talk about Memphis. But of course, Memphis is such an amazing city. It's a terrible and also beautiful marketplace, a place of all kinds of unprecedented and almost unimaginable gathering, but also dispersal, because it's a place through which goods flow and through which people flow and through which the whole brutal history that we share in which goods were also people flows. And it's like a source, and it's also a delta in a way at the same time. And so, and it's also, I would like to think of it as one of the northernmost Caribbean cities. It's a global city, and it's a city from which a tremendous kind of intensity at the level of how we study local space requires us to also recognize that that local space is part of the world. And these are two of the most profoundly international thinkers that one could ever imagine, Professor Spillers and Frank Stewart. I know I'm supposed to do all that stuff where I can tell you Frank was for 30 years the senior staff photographer at the Jazz at Lincoln Center, and Professor Spillers is Gertrude Conaway, professor and distinguished research professor emerita at Vanderbilt University. They've won every honor and that you could imagine. And again, it's just an extraordinary privilege and pleasure to be able to introduce them to you today. And I'm gonna rush back down to my seat so I can see what y'all do.
Am I on?
Well,
Can you hear me?
yeah.
It's our first image. And we both came from not too far from, this was in Jackson, Mississippi. So in Memphis, you can cross a street and be in Mississippi. So this image kind of conjures up for me all the things that was going on when I was a boy that were negative, you know. Some parts of the positive things in Memphis was colored by this negativity that was around us all the time. And here it is right here in front of us. You got anything to say about
Yeah.
it?
I didn't know we were going to start here.
Well, it's a good departure, you know.
Yeah, it is. It is a good departure. I think the first thing I want to say is thank everybody for bringing us together.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
I'm deeply appreciative for the invitation to be here, even though I think of myself in relationship to photography as something of an imposter. I was thinking, what in the world could I tell Frank Stewart or Fred or Ruth or anybody about photography? But nevertheless, you know, I'm here to do the best
You can talk about
I
the
can
culture.
do, and
You talk about the culture around photography.
yeah, I can certainly do that. I was thinking that I would start with an admission, in addition to not knowing much about photography. That the next thing I would say to you is that I'm afraid of the photograph, if not photography, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. You know,
Yeah.
photography lies.
Okay, but the photograph doesn't, right?
No, the photograph lies too.
Oh.
It's the biggest liar.
Well, I was thinking I was afraid of it because it told the truth, right? And that,
It's a matter of opinion.
okay, and that one of the reasons why and this is the first time I've said anything like this publicly, that the sense that visually, and I think that is probably the way I respond to anything about myself, recordings of my voice or any videos or YouTubes of myself. I don't necessarily want to see them. I'm in a film by a very famous filmmaker, actually, and it kind of frightens me to look at myself on film. I can't explain why that's so, but I thought of it as a subjective response to the visual that I've had all my life, and I think it's I can't explain it. I mean, perhaps somebody in the audience will be able to explain what this means. And I've thought it meant, as far as the photograph is concerned, that the photograph captures all your imperfections, physically and visually, in ways that you cannot dissemble or hide, that you see them, right? And that might not have been the aim of the photographer or the aim of photography to do that, that somehow that happens, right?
That's a fair assessment.
So,
That's a fair assessment.
yeah. And so I've thought, well, that's the one contribution that I can make to a colloquial or this colloquy that we're having, that what is it about photography and the term photogenic might have something to do with that fear. I mean, etymologically speaking, I don't know when that term enters the lexicography of aesthetics and the artists, photogenic. I suppose it's not in our vocabulary even as a possibility before photography. So that I think in the ordinary imagination, photography is always associated with beautiful people or beautiful photographs.
Well, they can be ugly people too.
But then that's what photography understands, I think.
They can be ugly people.
But I think just ordinary people taking pictures, you know, when you say, I like that picture of myself or I don't like it, I think it has something to do with that,
Well, the thing about
with the
photography
fear of
is-
what's going to be revealed in the photograph.
The thing about photography is everybody everybody's family has an album of their family
Yeah,
in photographs.
yeah.
And that's kind of a spin-off of what it can do. It's like, didn't Harriet Tubman talk about she sold a shadow to pay for her work?
Okay,
So she sold pictures of herself. I sold a shadow to, there's a saying.
okay, yeah,
And she understood it well, so did Frederick Douglass. He had a lot of dealings with photography and a lot of talking about it.
but the image for the non-photographer and the image for the photographer are different, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you know.
because the way you and Fred talk about light, for instance, I mean, Fred picks it up in his writing on the basis of something that you say about,
Well, that's all it is, light on surface anyway, photography.
yeah,
That's part of the intelligence of the medium, is that it's just light on surface. So it's not reality. These guys are not walking there. They're just
are not.
walking there. They're just, you know, that's just light on surface right there. But, you know, I brought this up just to talk about how we grew up in a culture that was surrounded by these guys. You know, in Memphis.
And where were you when you took that? And where were you standing? I wondered
I'm right here.
where you
That's a-
were.
that's
You
a
were right there,
That's
yeah.
a 28 millimeter lens. I'm right there.
Were they
next to
aware
them.
that you were?
Oh yeah, but there was a rally that day, and I had a National Endowment for the Arts grant to shoot in the South, and I was coming to go to Memphis from New York, and I stopped in Jackson, and I saw a newspaper that said there's going to be a Klan rally here next week on such and such a day. I said, I'm coming back for that. Klan rally? Hell yeah. So I went to Memphis and I came back, and sure enough, they were rallying their behinds off. And these guys were late. So that's what's happening
they
here.
were-
They're trying to get to their, you know, their spot, you know,
Yeah.
in the parade, in the rally.
Okay.
So this is what that's about. But it just, the photograph is not just about that. It's about how we felt about segregation and all this racism growing up in it. You know, I mean, that's why I chose this first one.
I think that's probably among the most terrifying images in my memory bank or in my
Well,
understanding.
it's
or in
supposed
my,
to be like that.
Yeah.
It's supposed to jar your, if you're African American, it's supposed to be like, dang, there they are.
And I would have to say, and I'm sorry, I think that the Washington Monument reminds me of those hoods.
Oh, that's another story.
Yeah.
That's another story.
And I looked at the monument, I saw it today coming over to the Phillips, and whenever I have that thought in my mind that looks like a long Klan hat,
Long Klan.
I have to kind of turn away and go, oh, you're not supposed to think that, right?
With the pointy top.
But it does, right? To me, anyway. And that's pretty terrifying right there.
Well, let's get off of this. See if we can. Oops.
But what amazes me is that you were able to get the shot and nobody asked you any questions about why you were photographing them,
They
or
never said nothing to me. In fact, they didn't even look at me, I don't think. I was just there taking pictures, you know.
and nobody.
Nobody. That wasn't the only picture I taken because they had a parade. So I took the parade, and
Okay.
it was something. It was.
Okay.
This is Chicago. This is a contrast in black and white. And I kind of grew up with a lady that's getting on the bus right there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't know her, but she represents black ladies that raised me in Memphis. And we would come across the lady on the right there all the time.
Yes.
And there was like a black
that.
code. There were black codes at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't even look at white people in the eye, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't talk to them. You had to get off of the sidewalk when they passed and all that. I mean, we didn't have to do that because white people didn't come to our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we didn't, but you were supposed to. You were supposed to, and you couldn't look them in the eye. You know. They had this thing called reckless eyeballing. You know anything about that? So all of this was still going on when I was a little boy growing up in Memphis. And this kind of conjures that up.
It reminds me of an image of Rosa Parks sitting on a bus. You know that famous?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The posture of the figure on the right reminds me of that. And there's something anachronistic about it, too. I mean, it could, well, it says 72, but it could be earlier, right? It could be the 50s in a sense?
It could
The
be,
posture of the figures?
yeah, it could be now. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like what's happening in the country now, it definitely could be now. All right.
Mm,
And this one is called the cleanup.
that's right.
So, you know, when you think about Lincoln and black folks, you think about, oh, he freed the slaves, but I don't know if he freed the slaves. He definitely didn't free this man. But the thing about the Civil War, I think, is that he wasn't freeing the slaves, he was freeing the free labor of the South, which was making them very wealthy, more wealthy than the North at that time. So the civil rights was, the Civil War was mostly about freeing the slaves so they weren't free labor anymore. That's how I felt about it. And this is what this is about to me, is that they're really not free anymore. Because as soon as the Civil War ended, you had these work camps, these work farms, where, you know, you had the black codes and they would put these guys like Partridge Farm and those places. That was all work. You know, they picked cotton for free again. They did all kind of work for free again.
Yeah.
So this is what that's about for me.
What time of day did you shoot that?
It's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm coming from
Morning.
I'm coming from Louisville, Kentucky on a bus. I had a bus ticket.
Yeah.
You can buy a bus ticket for a month and go around, you know, and get on the bus, get off. And I was taking pictures in these cities. I had come from the Kentucky Derby at that time.
Okay.
So I'm coming back home to New York, and we got a stop in D.C. So I'm gonna get off the bus and I'm gonna go see what's happening at these monuments.
Oh, okay.
So it's 5:30 in the morning. You see, he's cleaning up after the evening before, and the sun is coming in on an angle because it's 5:30. It's just coming up, and that's why it looks kind of like it does.
And why American Gothic?
Well, you know, Grant Wood and Gordon Parks, they did their American Gothic. This is my American Gothic.
I see.
Does this say anything to you? Because I took it for black women all around the world.
Oh, yeah, it says
So what this
it's
is,
a lot.
this is in Ghana, and it's in the mountains called the Aquapim, and I have property there. These women have to go early in the morning to get their water. They have to walk about a mile to get their water and come back to do their daily cleaning and their daily cooking with this water. And you have to be a very hardy woman to do this. You know, everybody can't do this. And in the evening, men do it. They have to go get the water. So it just talks to me about how strong black women are and how much they do work.
It's a beautiful choreography.
Yeah,
I mean,
I got them.
of the
I
figure.
was lucky I could get them in sync, in lockstep, you
Mhm.
know, doing the same thing. Kind of body language the same, contrapposta type thing
Mhm.
happening. This is my Mona Lisa. So this is Hawkins Bar and Grill. You ever been there?
Yeah, Memphis.
Is a,
Yeah.
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 You know? So
That one to me is mysterious. You want to talk about that?
I had an uncle that worked here when he was 16.
Yeah.
And so I did a book on barbecue, you know, it's called Smokestack Lightning. And this was the first chapter was on Memphis barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
So we would come here, we would end up in here, we'd go out and hit all the places around, Payne's and Charlie Virgo's, you know, Charlie Virgo's downtown. So this was like 2:30 in the morning, he's getting ready to close up, and it's the last drag, you know. And you get a setup. He didn't serve alcohol, he served a setup. He didn't have alcohol, you know. Setup is like an bucket of ice, 2 glasses, and you bring your own bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the jukebox and they played nothing but blues all day long, all night long.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt so familiar to me, growing up right there. And
The setting is yeah.
it's so familiar.
Very
I mean, it could be anything.
staging.
You could go there now and see.
And it's just, yeah.
You know, so I like the timeless quality of the image. Smoking the lovers. Y'all know Alma Thomas, she lived here in this city?
Mm-hmm.
You know her work?
A little bit.
Ooh,
Yeah.
She was a monster. She was a monster. So at this time, I'm working with David Driscoll, and we're working on two centuries of black art in America. And we're doing this documentary.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to Alma, and you know we set it up, and we're taking pictures, and we're doing the shoot. And the other woman that we're doing that day was Lois Malu Jones.
Uh-huh.
So Alma Thomas is in her own world, and Lois Jones was a great painter.
Mm-hmm.
Lois Jones wanted to know, what is Alma doing? What is she doing? What's she doing today? You know, what's she painting? What kind of color she, you know? She wanted to know about what's Alma doing. So this is kind of about 2 different women, but this is one woman here. Fred, you want to say something about Alma?
I wanted to ask both of y'all, is another word for photography reckless eyeball?
Kinda, you know.
Yeah.
Ishmael Reed came up with that book, Reckless Eyeballing, you know, and it's definitely a term. It could definitely get you lynched at one point of time in history.
Yeah.
Reckless eye. It was definitely a black code, and I was in the train station going to New Orleans one time, and it was like late at night, and there was a janitor, and he saw I had a camera, and he was up there. Boy, you know about reckless eyeballing? I said, no, what is reckless eyeballing? He said, man, you get lynched around here for reckless eyeballing with that camera. So, you know, it was still definitely a thing in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Is that relay between the way that photography can tell the truth and then also the way that it can lie? Is that part of the recklessness of
Yeah.
danger?
And that it's everywhere, and everybody presumes that they can be a subject of it or a maker of it, right?
Nowadays, yeah, everybody's
Yeah.
a photographer now, especially with the iPhone.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, so it's all over, everywhere. Imaging, image making, being subject to, being seen in a certain kind of way. So yeah, I think it's, for me, that's what it would mean, that recklessness is, that it's all over the place, right? That you really can't get away from it. Yeah.
Well, you know, when I
From the
started
gaze.
out in photography, I wanted to tell the truth. You know, I just want to tell the truth out here.
Yeah.
But a guy named Lou Draper, who was in Camoinga at the time, told me, well, you know, photography lies, man. It's hard to tell the truth when somebody lies, when the thing that you're dealing with lies.
Okay.
So I got that, when you think about it, I got that from him.
Well, lying in the sense that something happens between the moment that the photograph is taken and what comes out at the other end, right? Is that where the lying is
It's
supposed
not
to?
reality anymore. It's something that a
I see,
medium,
yeah.
it's something that a medium created. Not something that God created, it's something that a medium created, the camera created. So it's like a map of the territory. It's not the territory.
Okay, so none of that goes through the head of the subject that's being gazed at, as it were.
No. That's,
Yeah, that's.
you gotta be thinking about that for a long time to come to that realization that
Yeah, that's right.
this is about a medium, it's not about
The one
reality.
being gazed at is thinking about something else.
Yeah,
How is this going to look
yeah, how am I gonna look, you know,
yeah, but not the process itself, right?
not the process itself, they gotta
Yeah.
think about that. You know, like when you're taking pictures of your grandma, and she got to pose a certain way.
Exactly,
She got to put
yeah.
her feet a certain way.
Yeah, yeah,
And she's always got one foot in, you know.
yeah.
This is how I'm going to present myself in this
Exactly
photograph.
right,
You know,
exactly right, yeah. Yeah.
not that Elma was doing that. She didn't look like she didn't care. She just wanted her wig hat on. You know, don't take me without my wig. Wait a minute. Let me get my wig hat. I had another
My
lady
wig
like
hat
that.
on my head, yeah, I know.
Another lady like that. This is
Where were you when you shot this here?
Mahia, Texas. See, Mahia, Texas, where the first Juneteenth celebration took place.
I mean, where were you situated that you catch that? Right, I mean, wow, that's, of all the images that I saw, that one made me go, wait a minute, wait. So where were you? I mean, what was happening that
You mean where was I in relation to them? Or?
And yeah.
I'm standing right there.
And
Standing right there in front of them. And this is going on right in front of me. And I'm like, damn.
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, this is what y'all doing down here?
Yeah.
And that's a Juneteenth celebration.
And Juneteenth, yeah.
When was that? 93? Mahia, Texas. And they still, the descendants of the slaves still had that property that they did the celebration on. So different families had different plots and different little shacks and so they would come there once a year and they would barbecue and they would throw foot, you know, and they would dance and they would have all of these things going on. And this is one of them.
And the figure on the left is doing what?
She looks like she's trying to ride this dude.
No. Down here in this,
Oh.
right? I got that. I got that much.
You talking about the guy that's truncated. Okay.
Right. Yes.
You know, he's dancing too. He's dancing, they dancing, you know. There was some hip hop action going on.
Okay.
You know, self-portrait, you know, my work took me all over the world in my career. And this was working with Philip Morris here. I'm actually doing films. But when I wasn't working for them, and I had a little time off in the daytime, I would go out and take pictures for myself. So this is in Dominican Republic. And back then, they had just stopped doing commercials for cigarettes on billboards and on TV. That's why you don't see commercials about cigarettes anymore. But they still they still were doing that in these small islands, like Dominican Republic. It's not a small island either, big island. It shares with Haiti. So anyway, this was a movie house, and it was on a day when no movies were going on and nobody was in there. That was the booth where you put the money in and you talk to the person through this hole. And there was another glass in back of it. So that's what's going on here. I'm doing this reflection and self-port of me in this space.
You know, I looked at that quickly, and then I did several double takes, but it was almost Buddhistic to me. The posture, the composition of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The way the figure is situated in relationship to what turns out to be a car back there, but that looks like something else, right?
An altar.
I mean, it strikes me as a kind of Buddhistic posture. That's what I thought of when I first looked at it. And I thought, huh? What year is this? What's the name of this? And then I got something else, but I had to look at it a while,
The
right?
background is the ocean. The background is the ocean, and that's like
Okay,
the
yeah.
Malecon. In Cuba, it's called the Malecon. I think it's called the Malecon here, too. All right, now we talking about it.
God's trombone.
Now we talking about it. So this, we both come from
Yeah.
a tradition and a culture in the South. See, I was baptized a Catholic, but I had my uncle married this woman whose father was a reverend in the Baptist church. And I used to sometimes go and visit that Baptist church.
And I was baptized Baptist.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, man, well,
And learned God's trombones by heart once upon a time.
okay.
I used to
Okay.
I used to be able to recite the prodigal son and the creation. That's the kind of thing that kids of my generation,
You were supposed to
you had to learn those. You had to learn poems like that, long poems
Lift every
for
voice.
little programs at Christmas and Easter
Right,
and that
right,
kind of
right.
thing.
Lift every voice. You had to be able to sing those
Yeah.
verses, all those verses.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, my foray into the Baptist church was, they had music in there, real music. In the Catholic church, you had an organ, and you had some Gregorian chant type stuff that had
Yeah.
nothing to do with black folks. But when I went to the Baptist church, it had everything to do with black folks,
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes the spirit would be in the room, and it would descend on a sister, and she would get the spirit, and I would be looking at her like, wow, what's happening to her? She having an epileptic fit or what?
Yes. Yeah.
And then she would start flopping around, and there would be two other sisters, big sisters, that get on both sides of her so that her dress wouldn't go up and all that.
Yeah.
And they would keep her up on her feet and all that.
Right.
So I thought that was very interesting.
Yes.
Much more interesting than Catholicism.
Have you seen services where women would hurl their pocketbooks
Oh, no, I haven't seen
toward the pulpit?
I haven't seen that
Got
yet.
the spirit so?
I haven't
Yeah, I've
seen
seen
one.
that.
I haven't seen that one.
In the churches that I grew up in. Yeah, people would get the spirit real hard, and that was an example of what, throwing pocketbooks at the preacher. Yeah.
You take the money out or what?
No,
So they can.
there would be some usher back there to catch it, right?
Oh, I see. So this was a mass baptism in Harlem.
Okay.
Daddy Grace Church is still going on. I think they do it every year in June 9th, something like that. And you know, you gotta wear white, and you can be born again, even if you have been born again the previous year. You would still be born again, and they come out and get born again. And they have a fire hose that they point up to the sky, and it comes down like rain, and everybody gets wet, and everybody gets baptized. So this is what this is all about. And I think that's the last one. Are we
There's no more?
opening it up for questions?
Big ups and respect. One thing that I really love about you, man, is I went upstairs and I saw the inkjet work that you were doing now. And for me, as an artist that came up after you and inspired by you, it's just really good to see you, you know, because a lot of artists complain, oh, this is not real. Like you talked about the iPhone, that's not real. But here you are using materials that are current, you know what I mean? So showing the possibilities. And I always associate it with how the scribes used to deal with, with the way they illustrated the Bible, and then the Gutenberg press came out. So, you know, I just want to know how it is that you feel about the current things that are going on with photography, where everybody has a camera, but you still have to be an artist, you know what I mean, to like really catch stuff, where it's not just an accident.
Well, look, I did 40 years of black and white, developing it myself and printing it. And then digital came along, and there's no way that I thought that digital was going to overtake black and white film, you know. Man, you know, you got to be crazy. Because the first digital was like, you know, golf ball grain, and this is never going to work, you know. And then it started taking over, and then you couldn't even buy a camera that took film anymore. They didn't make them. So it's another language, and it's just like going to France or Spain and learning how to speak that language. There's another language you have to learn how to speak if you're a photographer, visual artist. So that's what I was always shooting color. So I had that base and the foundation of black and white. So I could, you know, I already had a foundation that I could fall back on shooting digital.
Did you do the print with the seal upstairs?
No, but the thing about it is I still shoot in negative color, and I scan it digitally and print it digitally. So, you know, one hand washes the other. I know we got some more.
Hello. Thank you. I have the microphone over here, and I'll pass it around. Frank, thank you again. This is Ray. I really appreciate just all your work. I had the opportunity to work with you in New York for many years, or work around you, I should say. But as Mr. Moten was talking about as well, the reckless eyeballing, that was pretty interesting to come across, because, as you know, I'm a photographer as well with you. I think what we're grateful for, not only for your 6 decades of work and masterful work, is in contrast to that term, how does the photographer, or what's the hope for the photographer to remain with integrity? So it's not reckless work that you produce. But I appreciate knowing that it is a lie. I didn't think about it that way before, so thanks again for bringing a new gem. But if you want to talk a little bit about that, like what's your take on how for it not to be reckless? Thank you.
So reckless eyeballing just talks about the black code that white folks had in the South for Negroes looking at white people, and especially white people in the eye. That was called reckless eyeballing, and you could go to jail for that. So we adopted that term in photography in terms of just being reckless in terms of taking chances with taking pictures. like nobody else has in the past. So you're doing a reckless eyeballing in terms of something new. And that's basically what that means for me, you know, reckless eyeballing. Yes, sir. You got the microphone?
No, I don't need a microphone.
You don't need no microphone. You got one of them voices.
Yeah, I'm good. So first, though, I apologize. So Michael Awkward, I went to Michigan. So the last name I expected to hear was Michael Awkward, particularly coming from somebody white. So that meant you took a CAS class, and I was just at CAS on Thursday, so it's crazy. So here's my question. You're taking, and this is actually, Frank, for you as well as Professor Spillers, you actually take pictures in three different periods of American life, and then you take it in a number of different continents. And you're interacting with folks like Romare Bearden, folks like Wynton Marsalis, and a range of others. What I wanted you to talk about was, I think of Romare Bearden, Wynton Marsalis, and Albert Murray, and Ralph Ellison as Negro nationalists, right? And there's a moment where you're taking pictures of Negroes, but you're also taking pictures of black folk. I was wondering if you could talk about that, you know, that kind of how you think about that distinction, and then to the extent you actually had conversations with folks like Romare and Wynton about this, you know, how that fits.
I never had that conversation with Wynton or Romare about the distinction of a Negro and a black person. But to get them both in a frame is just a photograph, you know. I mean, I'm not asking them what their affiliation is. You know, are you a nationalist? Are you a black nationalist? Are you a African pessimist? Afro pessimist?
Afro pessimist.
Afro, yeah, you know. I'm not asking them any of those questions. I'm just trying to fill up a frame and talk about what I think these people are about, or what they're doing, or what the action is. And I hope that I bring all of my experiences to this frame, and you bring all your experiences to this frame, and we can meet in the middle somewhere about what is actually going on. Because you never know what's going on. Yes, sir. Fred Moten.
Good evening. You were working on a project on botany with Dr. Rudy Lombard and Dr. David Driscoll. Now that they're no longer here with us, are you going to see that project through?
I would like to. I would really like to, but David didn't. He didn't finish his part of the project. You know, he was supposed to. Well, he did a lot of illustrations, and he was supposed to talk about stories, attach stories to these herbs. You know, the book was called The Education of a Sharecropper. And he took me to where he grew up, where his father made this shack in Georgia, in the woods in Georgia. I mean, it was like, believe me, it was a shack. And he came from absolutely nothing. And his grandmother was of Indian descent, American Indian descent, and they knew all about these herbs and what you could eat, what you could, medicinal herbs, and, you know, he was supposed to do all of that. But half of it didn't get done. So he had the illustrations, but he didn't have the stories. So I got to come up with some lies, you know, to finish this book. And Rudy and them did a great job. Rudy did a great job of introducing David in this book. And both of them are gone, and I've missed both of them a great deal. Rudy Lombard was just a phenomenal character. He was a chef and a teacher and a frontline civil rights worker. Did you know Rudy?
I didn't.
Dr. Rudy Lombard? Oh,
No.
He was a bad cat. In fact, Baldwin dedicated a book to him.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, he took Toni Morrison to France to meet Baldwin.
Okay.
And they had a great time together. Who else? Who else?
A
Yes,
couple of hands right here.
I think Fred has got.
Fred?
To say something.
We'll let Fred have the last question. He has a nice surprise.
Uh-oh. I'm gonna have another birthday? Or? That was the last surprise I had up in here.
I'm sorry, may I go? Okay, so thank you for an amazing discussion. I was a little surprised that you didn't discuss the image that I believe is on the cover of the catalog, the book, and that's on a lot of the promotionals of that regal black couple wearing white, the soul brother and his lady on the back, like they're in the back of the bus. They're
yeah.
their clothes are just perfection. And I wish we could look at the image, and I wanted to know what's the story behind that. Who are they? Where were they going?
Okay,
They just look
okay.
like royalty.
That's an interesting observation because I was doing an essay for Life magazine on youth in Harlem. And they actually wanted me to shoot gangs. And I said, man, look, yeah, there's no way I'm going to get into a gang to shoot it. So, you know, they got a lot of black folks with boom boxes that it seems like a whole movement. You know, and that was right around the time hip-hop was coming out. I think hip-hop came out in '74. That was Grandmaster Flowers and them. So they got boombox. That's the front of the bus. And I'm sitting on one side, and they get on, and they're doing their thing. And if you notice, it's a black couple, but they're holding hands, but they're looking in opposite directions. So I felt like that was indicative of where black men and black women were at that time, and probably at this time too. They're together, but they're looking in different directions. And that's what that photograph was about.
Yeah, I don't know them, but they're like I know them.
You know
I
them.
mean, there's something
Yeah, you know
very
them.
familiar or
You know
intimate about,
Yeah, you know them.
yeah. Yeah. I think one last, yeah.
Miss Stitt, yeah, sure.
I'm extremely curious. What was the best advice you received as a young photographer, and how would that differ from the best advice you would give today to a young photographer?
The best advice, well, I didn't get too much advice, but I came up with my own good advice. If you're starting out as a young photographer, just use something simple, like start out with one lens, one camera, and master that. You know, before you go to a zoom lens or a wide angle or telephoto, just get a 50. That's kind of the normal way you see it. And master that, the light, the exposures, you know, you can do that. And you'll be well on your way. If you master that, you'll be well on your way to being a good photographer. I don't know about great photographer, but a good photographer, yes.
I guess we need this to be the last question. So before I ask it, I'll just take the liberty of saying on behalf of everybody, thank y'all so much. I was actually thinking about the Juneteenth photo, which is my favorite. And,
I wonder why.
well,
A lot of people's favorite.
I think it's because it leads me to try to ask the same question that Professor Spillers asked, which is where were you in that? But you know, if there's this beautiful way in which it always feels like you're photographing from within the photograph, like you're with the people that you photograph, not above them or against them, but you're with them.
Oh, I was right there with them, believe me. They were all around me, too.
But this is,
Yeah.
but this question is actually for Professor Spillers, because I feel like it makes me think that in some ways there's a relationship between photography and close reading. The way you read Faulkner, the way you read, you know, social situations. It's like you're reading them from inside. Is there a relation? Is there a relay? Where are you in relation to the text that you read?
Yeah.
Is that for her? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. No, that wasn't for me.
Yeah, I never thought about that, Fred. Where am I in relationship to? You know, I think if I could just piggyback off what Frank said a moment ago, or what you just said about being inside the object or the phenomenon or the event, I think that's what I would try to describe. I know what it feels like to write something, and that might help to explain what I'm attempting to say. One of the problems that I have now with our technologies is that I can't write at a computer. I can only write long-handed, and then I convert it to a computer. And I think the reason why that's so is that not only is it a generational thing, but for me, writing is physiological. I have to actually feel a sentence. I have to have a certain kind of relationship to the words that's not just something on paper, but it has to have a kind of livingness or liveliness for me. And when I can feel that in the sense of relief, when I've had some success at getting an idea down on paper, that's when I know that it's working and that it's right. And so it's probably primitive and crude in that sense, but that's kind of the way I do it. And so I think that's really not having much of a sense of what you're doing other than something physical that's happening in your body, to yourself in a particular moment, right? I mean, it has to vividly be lived as a word or a thing. I'm trying to think, and it comes out of that, really.
So in relation to that photograph, Frank, it's like, when we look at that photograph, the thing that feels totally clear is that as hard as those folks were getting down, you were getting down just that hard too.
Yeah.
You know,
getting with it, right? Down with it, yeah.
No, time kind of stands still for me in those situations, where I'm concentrating so hard on what's going to be in the frame that I'm not hearing or I'm not cognizant of anything that's around me other than that frame, and what that's going to say, what the frame is going to say in the end. So
that comes across in your work. That intensity, right?
Intense, yeah.
Yeah.
Intense. It's intense. Yeah.
It's a beautiful intensity.
Sometimes I don't even hear the music, because I know that the music is not going to translate just what the music is saying to the person that's making it is going to translate. I want to thank y'all for coming, too. Yes, ma'am. I'm Thomas, yeah.
And I'm curious as to whether or not that was before or after her solo at the Whitney. She was the first African
What,
American to have a solo in New York Museum.
I'm sure that was before, this was 1975, 76, yeah, 1976.
Well, when you were talking about photography being a lie, I was thinking how that photo for me really captures, you know, I mean, like she's petite and round and comforted by her work, but she's like she's going to be like a superstar, you know.
Well, she wasn't a superstar yet at that time,
But in
and
her mind, I mean, I had a studio that overlooked her garden when I first moved to Washington in the 80s.
was she still living?
No, unfortunately.
Right,
But
right,
I
right.
heard stories from her nephew. And
Oh,
I
okay,
know
okay.
she had that vision for like her whole career. So
Well,
she
she-
taught Shaw Junior High.
She was a great artist, no question about it, and I'm sure she knew she was a great artist. Looking at what was going on at that time, you know, and looking at what the other people of her ilk was doing, you know, she was way ahead of them and way above them, you know, in terms of abstraction and all of that kind of stuff.
I wanted to just make a comment, being on staff here. I would say like the most common response to your work is speechlessness.
Speechless.
But people keep coming back and they bring their friends and they bring their families. And I think that is like testimony to your love for humanity. And it's really powerful to me to observe people observing your work and not lying.
Well, that sounds great. That sounds great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.